It's a lot to look at. So yes, thank you to them for facilitating that, and to the LCTV for making their people available for us. The committee and the community appreciates that. Thank you. All right, now for the fun part, the budget deliberations. So we had talked at the last meeting about going by function. That seemed overly broad and kind of difficult to follow, at least in my opinion. So I had sent out an email saying I'd like to review by account, which just really seems to me makes a lot more logical sense. It's a different way than we've done it, at least in the past that I can remember. So a little more homework to be done, but I think, as I told Andrew, I could be won over to this method potentially. So we shall see. All right. This is the updated version.
This is just some updates, some inquiries that have come through, some information to share.
Pretty thick.
Huh?
Pretty thick.
Lots of numbers.
Hey, all right.
All right.
That's district-wide.
On the first thought, as Nikki had mentioned, we did the tour, so that kind of just reiterates what Nikki had said. I'd like to thank Matt Lepore, who was the LCTV rep that was there that night, for chasing us around the schools. A lot to look at. There was a couple inquiries that came in today. First, regarding special services, the BCBA and the increase in that line. In reviewing it with Devin Bandersky, the BCBA serves students by providing support in 3 different areas. The roles provided for these by different individuals depending on student needs. It's the BCBA role, behavioral tech, behavior specialists, depending on what role they're in, it's billed at different rates. They provide direct and indirect services depending on student needs, and the number of students that is in need of those services has increased within the district. So that being said, use of this contracted service helps the district to maintain the students' needs in district rather than having to do an out-of-district placement for those behavioral needs.
Right. So I had sent this question because as I was going through the budget, I noticed that line item in particular had quadrupled. It went from 15,000 to almost 60,000, and so that jumped out to me as well, why? So I appreciate the feedback and the input there.
In the inquiry for special ed transportation, so there's routes in particular that were able to be covered by first student last year. This year they notified us they cannot do those routes, so we're using a different vendor for those.
Okay.
They bill on a per student rate rather than a daily rate. So as the number of students increases going to those locations, the rate paid for it goes up. There's also a question about the challenge day at Campbell.
That's right, because last year we talked about it being an every other year program,
Yep.
and it was in last year's budget and in this year's budget. So based on what we discussed last year, it should be in next year's budget.
So in discussing it with Mr. Lonergan, good evening.
Good evening.
They, the intent was to run it this year and next year, and then start the rotation in order to give a greater exposure to students in the high school to this program. So there's more familiarity with it, and we're able to move forward from there.
Okay.
So the first one is scheduled for March of 2020. So during this fiscal year, and then we'll continue with it next year and then start the 2-year rotation.
Okay.
So the rest goes into what was involved in the meeting with Andrew. So I just went through and I noticed 2 areas in particular, which was the workshops and travel, the 272 line specifically, and also the attrition that we were discussing. So in the attachments that are in here, there is the attrition information. It gives the 3 years of what the actual attrition was, and then at the bottom I've calculated the 3-year average of what that is. The next couple pages go through the conferences and workshops, and Mary Woodman is here tonight, and she could discuss some of the things that go into that. Main thing in workshops would be the increase over the 5 years, where you're going from a very minimal amount of $600 up to the $17,000 range. There's a lot this way. And 5 years ago, you had a very different curriculum coordinator doing things in a very different way. And Mary is working very hard to get us on the right track and the things we need to do. And involved in that is professional development internally to get our teachers up to where they need to be and all our staff up to where they need to be. So if there's questions regarding those curriculum things and why those increases, she also consolidated a lot of accounts from the school level to the district level. So she has greater control over where those funds are going to each school.
Yep. Thank you.
In the travel line, going over 5 years, total increase that I saw in the travel line through the review was about $1,500 over the 5 years. And there's actually a reduction from FY20 to FY21 in those lines. So that's what I saw. I mean, we can discuss what Andrew saw in his findings.
Just for point of reference.
Yep.
This is approved, not actual. Correct?
Yeah, I'm going by approved budgets
Right.
for
And
each
so my
year.
analysis was based on actual spend.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Yep.
So
I did a reconciliation of the account in the budget. The budget that was originally provided to Andrew, that was pre the reduction of the 10% increase. So this gives a reconciliation of that account to agree to what's in the budget report. Reconciliation of the general fund budget, because the total budget of what Andrew had in the sheets, because of those decreases, did not agree. So there was some activity after that original budget took place. So I reconciled that on that page, noting these small differences due to rounding at the bottom. Then the budget summary, which I believe you already have, just providing another copy. And then I did a breakdown of the increase in payroll on the final page, objects 100 through 232, showing that increase and giving notes as to what the differences were to reconcile, or to break down what made up that increase. I will note that in the 2900 function, there was a cut last year by the budget committee that was applied in that account rather than allocating. Allocating across salary and benefit lines is a very time-consuming process. Gets a little confusing at times. So in a lot of cases, such case with the collective bargaining agreement this year too, it's applied within that function just as a number. So when you come down to the bottom line, you have an idea of where you are. So there's that reconciliation. So these are just the things I wanted to provide.
Excellent. All right.
So I do think it's important, right, that the committee understands that the numbers that we all have in front of us are not representative of specifically the benefits reductions that were already taken. That's a big number, right? 230,000 or so dollars. So just be cognizant of that. Okay.
All righty. So let's begin. Mention going accounts. So the first account is 100.
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty easy.
so I think 100 is obviously in 110, right, or salaries, right? This is obviously the biggest area for reduction because this is the attrition line. So we're starting with a big bang here, right? But I think it warrants a conversation amongst the committee as to what to do about the kindergarten teacher. Because as mentioned in my member input, right, my number here is $400,000, right? The same number I shared with you folks last week and the committee for the past month, right? This includes the $88,000 for the new position for the kindergarten, right? So if it's the will of the committee, and it's certainly my impression that I would like to pull out that $88,000 with the recommendation that it's on a warrant article, and that would be netted out of this. That is also, right, would leave this at $312,000, right, doing the math, which is very close to the attrition information
Mhm.
just supplied by Mr. Zabicki.
So would you then make that in two motions?
I would make it in two motions, but it's the will of the committee as to what they'd like to do.
I mean, I've been very clear. I support the idea of putting the kindergarten position as a warrant article. That's my opinion. I don't.
All right, so why don't we just make a
Well,
motion in the interest and we see how it goes?
But just for clarification, it's not the
Yep.
position, it's creating that fund. That
No, this is
This is a position.
The
Position.
fifth position.
there's currently 4 kindergartens. This would be the
Right, but
5th
this-
kindergarten. This is
Due to a policy change
Yeah,
by the school board, which they are absolutely justified and warranted to do, the student ratio for that
right.
grade has changed. With that, there's a need for a 5th kindergarten teacher due to enrollment projections, right? It is a new position. It's in the budget currently because the policy changed, right? And technically, it's now, they're within their reason to add it specifically to the operating budget because the policy changed. My view is that I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be a warrant article. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't pass, right? It's truly a need. We have a justified student ratios that support it. Let's just be transparent to the voter.
Can I just clarify, Mike, did something change? I thought this was for a fund to fund the warrant article.
Yeah, so what the board is proposing as a warrant article is that we've already raised and appropriated the 5th position this year. We have the money right now in the budget, right?
Okay.
The proposal is to put on the warrant to take that money out of fund balance and to park it in a kindergarten reserve fund or a staffing for kindergarten reserve fund. So we don't have to raise and appropriate it a second time. We can take what we have, put it in a capital reserve for that purpose, which means we can take it out of the budget for next year. But we would do that if we get the blessing of the budget committee and the support of the budget committee to recommend that approach.
Yep.
And so it's sort of doing what I think I'm hearing you say, which is it's putting the question in front of the voters.
Mhm.
Are you willing to put money aside for the 5th kindergarten for the point at which it's necessary? And therefore pulling it out of that number
Because it's already appropriated.
because we already have it.
Yeah,
Correct.
I brought up a concern I had at the school board meeting, which I think if we're talking a fairly large cut, discussing a fairly large cut, is what we spoke about. If we do pull that money out and the voters reject it, and then we make a large cut to payroll, now we still have to find, because we're adding that position if we need to, then we have to find that money. One of the things I also had brought up, just to put it out there, is maybe that money goes into the general fund this year, we raise it again next year. That way, if we run into trouble, the money's there for the 5th kindergarten teacher. And then if it's not used, it goes into the fund
So I think we're
with
in
the warrant.
a couple of conversations here. I think first is, do the voters support the policy change? So do we even support a 5th kindergarten teacher, which is why I would support that one.
Well,
My concern on.
Just to back up for 1 second, though, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not trying to start an argument or upset anybody. If we need the 5th kindergarten teacher, we're getting the 5th kindergarten teacher. I mean, this has nothing to do with getting a teacher. We're getting a teacher if we need one, if the number of students require it. This is strictly to park the money that we've appropriated already into a fund so we don't have to raise it again year after year. The one concern I do have, which I brought up to the school board, is if we don't raise that money again next year, we hold that money to put into a fund, the voters vote it down, we cut a lot of money out, and we need that 5th teacher. Now we're in a bind.
So I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this. First, my concern is limiting it only to kindergarten. We had this situation not too long ago where we added a 1st grade teacher 4 days before school. So if we're creating a fund for an unexpected teacher, why would we limit it just to kindergarten? It could happen to any grade, especially with all the new building. Why just one class? So from a logistic point of view, if we created a fund, I would be reluctant to focus on just one grade. Second, Mike, and I go back to we're having 2 conversations here. We changed the policy. We're assuming we're going to move forward with the policy, but I'm saying, what if the voters say no to that policy?
But that's not our
That's not
purview.
our-
It's
not their purview.
That's not our purview.
But we don't have to fund, we do
It's
not
a
have to.
School
That's a
policy,
school board
Kevin.
policy.
It's
So,
not.
I mean, we're gonna get down this
up for
rabbit
vote.
again,
The
right?
school
But
board
I think
voted on it.
for me, it's numbers, right? This is numbers. This is a numbers meeting,
Right.
right? So with that, right, will we support $88,000 out of this budget to do in a warrant article, whatever the school chooses to do with it? right? They can craft the language however you want, and that would need to come back to the budget committee for a revote because it's an
And Mike-
impact.
Mike, do I remember a legal reason why we couldn't have it open-ended like Carrie said? I thought there was a legal reason it had to be kindergarten.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I
Okay.
think we could have
Because we
a
discussed it,
staffing
but there was a
capital
reason.
reserve fund. Just to be clear, it's $102,858 because it's the kindergarten teacher and the kindergarten para. We
Para.
raised and appropriated both of those, right?
Right.
So the dollar amount really is 103 for easy numbers. And we could certainly put that in to a staffing reserve fund.
Mhm.
You have to understand that the board's main objective, what they have their eye on, is really that kindergarten number because it's the most unpredictable because they're not here yet. We're
Yeah.
counting noses that haven't even enrolled
Mhm.
and predicting noses that aren't even possibly
Right.
living in town yet, right? So that
Yeah.
makes that harder. It's easier for us to respond to a first, second, third because the students are in the system and we have trends that we can look at. So anyway, so when we came to you, we were saying, what's your recommendation to us? And, I think the other thing is that we're in a fortunate position right now because at the end, the tax bills came out. There wasn't a huge spike. There was additional revenue this year. We have this money sitting in our budget and we're just saying, we've already raised and appropriated it. We're not in a bad situation financially. Let's park it for when the inevitable will happen, right? And then honestly, I think if the public is upset about the policy, I would encourage them to contact the school board and say, we think you got this policy wrong because we enacted this policy in a public manner. We advertised it. We had it on TV and we heard nil. Not a single person balked at us about it. So if there's really outcry that the board has wrong policy, that 18 is the wrong number, 18 4 or 5-year-olds is the wrong number to have in a classroom, come and tell that to the school board and we'll respond to that. But
Right.
until then, I don't want to muddle it by putting that question in front of people. That's really not the question.
Yeah.
So I would still say I would support a more broad capital fund because I remember the scramble for our first grade class.
But again,
And
I
there's
think
nothing to say it couldn't be any other
just to
classroom.
keep it, without any scope creep to tonight's meeting, because I
Yep.
think we have a lot to cover, right? That it's numbers, right?
So from that perspective,
So-
I would support pulling it out and
So
have them drop
I'm
the
going to
warrant.
make a motion. So I make a motion to reduce salaries and benefits by $103,000, which represents the kindergarten teacher as well as kindergarten para, with the recommendation to the SAU and the school board that we'd like to see it as a warrant article.
Excellent. So there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob will second. All right. Any further discussion? Not hearing none. All those in favor of the reduction of 103,000? Was
Yes.
it? Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay.
Can I just throw some out here too?
Mhm.
Because of kind of what's transpiring here. And I know we're going to go by your account numbers and like that, but just simply by hearing what they said and what was said, what's printed in the beginning of this packet, it doesn't matter what we cut. Like they're going to spend the money however they want. They say it in black and white right there. So, I mean, we can argue it all we want, but isn't a bottom line cut pretty much what needs to happen? Instead of like explaining out, well, why you want to cut this, like account number 332 or six,
Look,
I think we still need to hear where it's coming from so people can make.
Right. I mean, we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence. We're transparent where we're making our reductions. You're absolutely right, though. At the end of the day, it's a bottom line budget. They're going to end up with a number. They can shuffle that number however they please.
I think the other piece for us, Brian, is that we need a strong budget committee vote to support the warrant article, right? So when the board next Wednesday will vote on the final language, next Thursday it'll come back here to say, here's what our proposed warrant is. And I just want everybody who's then voting on that question to be able to say, yes, we want you to park that money because we know you've already raised it. That's where I'm coming from. So you're right, it's a bottom line thing, but it's also an understanding of how we're going to make all this the easiest way for the voters, right, to understand and the taxpayers to fund,
You said you already raised that money this year,
right?
right?
The
So-
last 2 years, right?
So
This year,
Just this is.
next year, are you going to have to,
you just took it out of next year.
I understand, well, if this goes through, is that money going to have to get raised again every?
So it would come
that's
out
what
of
we're
the
doing.
fund balance. So instead of returning 103,000 to offset the taxes, it would go to this fund. So you're not raising additional funds to fund this warrant article. You're using it from the money
But
that's.
you're asking, you're going to go through a warrant article to get that money instead of,
Correct.
Yeah, so it'll transfer from fund balance to a capital reserve with the trustees of trust funds with the school board as agents to expend. So if we need to add a teacher, we withdraw the money from.
we just
that fund.
basically took that money out of your budget, according to that vote, right?
Putting into a separate account, they can
And-
use it
That they have access
as
to.
required.
So it comes out.
And
It's like a holding.
So it's the money from this year's budget they agreed to not spend if they didn't need it. So that money will be extra at the end of the year. That money will then go to fund this.
I get that, but we just voted to take it out of this budget, right?
Right.
So
Because they already have the money for it.
Right.
Because it wasn't spent this year.
Because we were going to give it back this year and raise it next year.
Okay.
And before we get off the topic, because I don't want to go back and forth on this, right? So we're going to write a general fund. Are you talking K-12? Are you talking elementary? I mean, I want to come in, I want the board to consider whatever restrictions you want to have before we,
In my view, right, I'm going to default back to the school board and whatever they think is in the best interest of the district.
so we'll make it very broad,
It's not for the budget committee
any
to say.
position, right?
That would be a school board policy.
It's not for the budget committee to say that, right? But I would support, right, whether it's just K or K through 12, either way, it's fine with me.
I'm sure the board knows they're watching, right? So, thank you.
Okay,
All right.
we're still on salaries.
Yes, we
So I
are.
will make a second motion. I
Okay.
love it when the numbers work out. Love it. Like, so I'm going to make a motion to reduce salaries and benefits by $297,000, which also directly aligns to page 4 of what was provided by Mr. Isabicki this evening.
All right. So we have a proposal to reduce salaries and benefits by $297. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We'll give it to Bill this time.
The 297,000 plus the 103,000 equal to 400,000.
I like round numbers. So, all right. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those.
And I-
Go.
Ooh, sorry.
So I want to make sure that I understand where that number is coming from.
Yeah.
Because when I look at Mr. Isbicki's packet
Yep.
and you look at the 3-year trend,
Yes.
um,
It equals to FY21. Where there's
hang on, I gotta
a,
find the sheet. Which page is that one
it was
on?
page 4.
Can I make it one statement while you're giving that one?
Yep.
I guess my only concern, Andrew, is remember the teachers are on steps. So even though we lost a number of teachers last year
Mhm.
and the average pay went down quite a bit, it's going to come up steps every year. So that's one thing. I would think that's one thing to take into account. Corey can back me up on that. And I would just like to point out again, my one big concern, I keep bringing this up, is with this kindergarten position. If the voters vote this down and we need that 5th kindergarten position, we have to find that money somewhere else because we won't be raising it again this year. That's why I had brought up the potential of maybe putting the money back into general fund, re-raising it next year for one more year as a warrant. That way, if we need the money, it's voted down, it's there for the 5th grade teacher. And if we're making this deep a cut, that is a serious concern I have. Just because if it is voted down and we don't re-raise the money, now we're down another 100,000 with the steps.
My concern also is going into, coming into this year, there wasn't a contract in place. There was a lot of uncertainty. So when you hit the summer, a lot of teachers left. We have a contract now. I would anticipate, you're going to have those retirements and you're going to have some natural attrition through there. But I would expect, can't guarantee that not as many teachers are going
But did
to
we-
jump ship at that point.
Did we not hear that the rate of attrition was actually not much greater than we've experienced in the past? We just were more visible this time around.
when we were looking at it earlier in the summer, but we had, that was accurate. I think when we were here in June, and it was the henny penny, everybody's leaving, and it really wasn't the case when we studied it, right? However, we then had additional people that left over the summer with late hires. And so let's look at the numbers. It went from 263 2 years ago to 218 last year to 297 the most recent year. So it did spike up a little bit in the last fiscal year that we're talking about. So the number being proposed equals last year's, but that is the highest of the 3-year average. And I'm just
It's
suggesting
also
that if somebody,
increasing for that budget, right? So the budget overall is up $1 million.
But we do have to keep in,
FY21 is $1 million higher than FY20,
is that the final?
minus the 200,000 in the benefits, right? So
So I guess all I'm suggesting is we put a lot of stakes in 3-year averages. A number of 260, which is the 3-year average, is more palatable than a 297. It's still a pretty drastic cut. It doesn't address what Mr. Myers is talking about with a bad scenario of the kindergarten position not getting funded and then 80 kids showing up, which is a possibility, right? So, but I'm just suggesting that a 3-year average number is perhaps easier to absorb.
Madam Chairman, I'd like actually to call upon each committee member to share their thoughts.
Mike, can I steal you for 2 minutes for something?
Yes.
Just need to spot.
We apologize. I'm sure Corey explained, but they are still negotiating across the street. So we left to come over here. We've been sitting in the room since 8:30 this morning. And
God bless
so
you, because I was saying
we-
I got 3 hours.
we have 2 things going on right now. So I apologize, but you're in good hands, Corey.
3-hour classes were a struggle for me, so I don't know how you did it for 12 hours.
I mean, I can say that I feel more comfortable with the 3-year number, the 260 than the 297. I think the 297, while it's the way it's laid out here, there's too many unknowns. I think that this line deserves a decent cut that we're making. I think I feel more comfortable with the 260 looking back over the past 3 years.
So the attrition is what you experienced. Was this beyond our cut? Because every year we take an attrition number. Is that in addition to the number we take? Because I recall years of 300,000.
I think
So-
the FY19 number, I think a large chunk of that was actually proactively taken by the district.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do the same thing in 20, so those would have come from this committee.
So I guess my question is this what came from the approved budget? So after we took our attrition reduction,
These would be based on actual expenditures for that.
right, so we took a reduction
Mhm.
in the budget process. And then in addition to, your budget's all set, good to go for the year.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, is this the number, or is this from the start when you proposed it? Because my concern is, if we're saying you experienced $219,000 attrition,
That'd be the
after we took a
summer.
$200,000 reduction, then 297 is not.
That'd be the summer after I imagine. I mean, yeah, Holly's not here to speak to that.
So
She's more that side of the house.
So to me, I recall we used to take attrition numbers in this range. I mean, the budget traditionally is one that I tend to feel has more than enough elsewhere to cover this if we didn't quite achieve what we would anticipated. So I'm comfortable with the 297. personally.
And I just want to share an unfortunate reality. You talk about those things being, the money's plenty and it's somewhere. The sacrificial lamb, if you will, is usually facilities.
Yes.
So maintenance continues to struggle. So I'm just it's not unique to the school district. That is just the way. It's, if you need to fund an educational need for a student, that doesn't get fixed this year because we have to fund this now.
How much money did we return at the end of last year?
This most recent,
Mhm.
147, 149.
So were any programs in danger of being axed or cut because of an attrition number? Or did we have enough money to fund the?
And that was
needs?
that was after encumbrances, right?
So I maintain my point that there's enough money within that can be found within the budget to fund it. So I'm comfortable with 297.
Other committee members?
We're doing a round table.
Yeah, but he asked for everybody's input.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm comfortable with the 297. I mean, mathematically, it certainly works out, and we're talking numbers. Certainly don't want to cut any programs that are essential. It's not the intent. But if there is money in the budget, I go for the 297.
I think I'm on the 297, although I'm going back and forth between the two, but I'm leaning towards 297.
Mr.
I'm fine with it. I mean, I have an amount of money that I want cut from this thing. And whether it's from that one or another one, I still stand my point where you're going to take the money and use it wherever you want. So, as long as I get to that number that I'm looking at, so I'm fine with the 297. And like what you said, is if the voters vote down that, if you guys go to a warrant article, the voters vote it down, then they're saying they don't want it. And you're saying we're still going to put a teacher there anyway. I mean, that guy, Rich Lascelles, he's made a point. A lot of people cannot afford taxes going up in this town. And just because the school says we have to have it, well, what about all the people that who don't get raises every year, whose taxes keep going up, but they don't get raises? And I think that needs to be considered. So, yeah.
None of you.
I think the 260 is a good number, myself. But I'll go with whatever the board says.
You can always vote no.
I mean, so we have a motion and a second.
All right.
If there's a motion to amend it. So.
All right, hearing no motions to amend one. All right, so let's vote on the motion at the table. So there's a motion made and seconded to reduce salaries and benefits by $297,000. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. 5. Not Milford.
Were the no's?
I think there's 3.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other relative to salaries and benefits?
The 2 other positions that they want to add, the 3rd grade teacher and the custodian, my belief is same as yours, that any new positions full-time should be on warrant articles. And not that we wouldn't support them, because I obviously would, but I think it should be a warrant article. Just my personal thought.
The one, I'm sorry, I didn't
The
know.
3rd grade teacher, additional one, and the custodian at CHS.
I think we have to remember when we look at the warrant article that was passed, what was that, 15 years ago, 12 years ago? There was one the next year that excluded teaching staff, correct?
No,
So-
same level of service.
Yeah.
So in this case, the 2nd graders currently have 5 classrooms. The same number of kids are moving forward with the same teacher ratios. So therefore, they would get 5 3rd grade teachers in order to maintain the ratio, the same level of service.
Yep.
So actually, on this one, I appreciate where you're coming from, but traditionally, we would support the 3rd grade teacher. You can make the motion, but
Well, no, if that's
right.
if that's what it is, that's what it is. I'm a firm believer in that. I voted my own town budget, and they wanted to propose a new position. I voted against it. Got in trouble for it, but I still did it because I got to stand by my convictions. What about the custodian then?
So I would agree with your belief that the custodian is
Put
an
on the
additional
warrant
position.
article. Okay, and drop the 3rd grade teacher. Okay, that's fair enough.
So
My granddaughter will be happy.
so are you making a motion to remove the custodian?
Sure. I'll make a motion, Madam Chairman, to remove this additional Campbell custodian from the budget, the amount of $53,051.57.
All right, I'm sorry, I need to write that number down. That's 53.
53,051.57.
All right. All right, this motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All right, discussion?
No, that's inclusive of
Yes.
salary and
That's-
benefits.
Yeah, that's everything that they have
associated
listed
with
on
that
this sheet
position.
right here.
That's what I'm looking for. It's in here somewhere.
This is a new position.
It's not a new position.
That's
So
why I
let me-
want clarification.
Let me be clear on it.
Yes. that's-
So
This is a
when we were properly staffed at the high school, we had this position. During tight budget cuts, the position got eliminated. The building has suffered as a result of that. Our custodians at GMS and LMS are cleaning, they're responsible for cleaning 25,000 square feet. I'm using raw numbers
That's 24 to 25,000 square feet.
per custodian. And at the high school, the same people are covering 40,000 square feet. And if you ask the same person to clean 40,000 square feet, they're not going to do it as well because they have to move faster. And as a result, multiple years of moving faster and not doing it as well because you're understaffed has resulted in the building looking tired. So it's our newest ship in the fleet, and it's showing wear and tear and age and cleanliness because we've got a crew killing themselves and they can't get it done. So it's not a new position. We're going back to the level of coverage that we had at one point. And again, the board's feeling is it's not necessary to put it on a warrant because we have custodians. This isn't like we've come up with a new position out of the blue. You need custodians to keep your building clean, to take the garbage out, to do everything at the end of the day.
It's also
That's why
the busiest school in the community that's constantly being used. And the situation tonight is we have the lead custodian from CHS covering at LMS. So it's two people tonight covering 60,000 square feet apiece.
And the reality is, I think those are very honorable and excellent discussions for a warrant article. But I understand that we have custodians, but we also had tutors, and we put a math tutor at GMS on a warrant article because we felt it was a new position. Consistency for me is we do not currently have a second custodian. We're looking to add one. It is, by definition, an additional position to what we have right now.
Madam Chairman, I disagree with that. We had a second, right?
When?
I heard we've had a second.
our second shift has how many?
There's three currently. There used to be two daytime custodians at CHS.
That's
I
where
would
the cut
agree
was
with
made.
you that, from our committee perspective, if this was, and I asked this big question strategically, if this is a new position, because I knew the answer, right? This is not a new position. This is a replacement of an existing position that hasn't been filled. That's my understanding.
And
But the
it hasn't been
position
filled
doesn't
because we
exist
took it as a
anymore.
cut when the economy was bad and when we were, as I understand it, was prior to my time, but positions were cut. And so a little here, a little there, and the maintenance department took their portion of that, right? And so what we're saying is we've recognized that as not have, that wasn't the best move, right? The NEAS team comes in, they view our building, they write in the report, you need to hire additional custodians because the building's dirty, the bathrooms are dirty, the hallways are dirty. And it's not a matter of anything other than just staying on top of it because they're shorthanded. That's it. It's not that the kids are disrespectful or messing things up. Snow falls, you throw salt down. How many people have salt tracked into their house by their kids? Now put 400 of them coming in your front door. That's what happens. Salt and sand plus staff coming and going, it all gets tracked in. And now the same people have to clean that up. It's a lot to stay on top of.
And I'd just like to point out, I'm not trying to air dirty laundry. The one thing I told Mike, the one thing I heard after the NEASC visit, because I knew some of the teachers, they were shocked how tough our building looked after 20 years. And it's not lack of effort. It's not lack of cleaning. I think it's lack of manpower. Somebody calls out sick. Somebody has to move. Now you have two. The building's used more than any other building, and you're not even taking into account the number of athletes going in and out of that building, with their cleats. And that's where I think we as a town let ourselves down because we let our buildings run down instead of keeping them where they need to be. And I'm not going to lie, I agree with you 110% that new positions should go to a warrant, but this is one I feel we've had in the past, and it's a capital investment. I'm not looking at this as a waste. I'm looking at this as let's keep our buildings where we don't have to build a new one or replace
The level
them.
of service has suffered
Yeah.
because we don't
Right.
have.
And I would challenge you, the job they're doing right now, the bathrooms, they're reacting to it. One of the first things I told Mike was, have you ever looked at the tile around have you guys ever looked at the tile around the bottom of the bathrooms? Mike and Corey went in and they're re-epoxying them, whatever the cost, but there were some things that were mishaps over the last few years, and it's maintaining these buildings so we don't have to put the money into them down the line. And
The other night when we did the tours of the high school, so Ms. Forty was on the tour with us. I mean, I walk those halls every day, but you know what? When you're touring a guest, you'll look a little different at stuff. The stairs were dirty. There were coffee drops on the stairs from, just a kid carrying a cup of coffee up and it had been spilled and it had probably been there multiple days because in the middle of getting everything done, mopping the stairs nightly to get the coffee drops off. Didn't happen. And I immediately thought, I got to ask them to get after that. But I know, and they'll do it. Trust me, if you say something,
Mhm.
they have so much pride in that building that they will absolutely hit it. But it's simply a matter of not enough people to stay on top of it. That's all I want to say.
No, and I appreciate that. So there have been mixed ways we've handled this as a committee. We have we have expanded positions in the budget without a warrant article within recent years. We have put these positions to warrant in recent years. So it's really going to be a matter of what does each individual person feel is the appropriate way of handling this. Do they want to put it into the budget as a reinstated previous position, or do they feel that it's a position that was eliminated at one point is now new again? So I tend to vote consistently. So and I try to keep my votes consistent. So based on my past votes will dictate how I vote tonight. So there's been a motion and a second, I believe, right? So all those in favor of reducing the salaries and benefits by 53,052 and encourage the school board to put this on the warrant article, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
So that means the reduction fails. It's 4-0. 4-4.
I have Rob and I have,
It's Bill, myself, Rob, and Brian voted no.
I'm sorry.
We voted no. We voted yes to the reduction.
So
I didn't.
So 1, 2,
And Jeff, thank you.
4. Yep. I went with the negatives first. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So who were the?
So it was you.
Yeah.
Rob.
Which one?
Yes.
I thought you said she. Did you vote yes? I voted yes.
To the reduction.
Oh, I thought you said no.
All right. So are there any other items to discuss under our 110 salaries? Hearing none, that puts us to the account 112. Actually,
Well,
we
so-
consider them all together?
So we did salaries and benefits.
Yeah.
If there's any other motions to salaries
any
or benefits, now's the chance. Otherwise, Madam Chairman, I recommend we move on to 270.
All right. Let's see what I have.
Course reimbursement. See, I don't have it. I didn't do it that way.
270 is course reimbursement. All right, so we will move on to line 270, hearing
Just
nothing.
sorry, point
Yes?
of reference. Corey, I had a handout. Did you receive the handouts by function and by account?
I did.
Okay,
There
there should be
is-
extras.
You weren't
I
here yet.
tried, just to make it easy after our
You weren't
conversation,
here.
I
That's
tried to do
separated.
it both ways.
Not your
So the cuts that we make by account, I've also tried to roll it through the functions as well, just for guidance.
So which one is up there?
So this is account. The committee had
This is-
chosen
got it.
to
Yep.
do reductions by account.
Yep.
So you have both.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, this is the method that makes most sense to me, so that's what you all want. So 270 is course reimbursement, non-union. Are there any comments? You had yours somewhere.
For those in the audience, I think, let me blow this up a little bit.
So you didn't have anything here.
Nope, my next motion's on
All right, so
272.
go ahead.
Well, I did mine differently than you
Please.
did, so
There's no right way, so go for it.
it's a totally different format. So
Whatever works for you.
I was gonna reduce it by 176.
$176?
Yeah.
All right, so there's a motion to reduce account 270 by 176. All right, is there a second?
Second, just for discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that $176?
One-
Or 170? Okay, thank you.
Reason why I did is the overall ask in this budget is it's like an increase of, I think how do I do it, 4.59%, I think. So understanding that their budget does have to increase, I get that. I'm trying to reduce the whole thing by basically around 2.2%. So each line item I did was subtracting out 2.2%. So that's how I came. I'm trying to do it his way because I didn't do it through these account numbers. I did it a different way. But
I think you're on the wrong line though. This is a 25% decrease already in the budget, isn't it? Yes.
but I'm not going by that.
Oh, okay.
What I'm doing is
Oh,
what you're asking for, the 8,000. Multiplying that by 2.2% comes out
Okay.
to 176.
All right, so you're taking a 2.2% reduction off the
Pretty much
line.
across the board. I mean, because like I said, they're going to take the money and put it where they want. So in order to achieve the 2.2% overall cut, if you take it line by line, that's how I did it. I didn't do it Andrew's way because I didn't. Like I said, you guys went by account number. I didn't. I went by
Page by page.
like you 1201, and you had
Oh, that went by function? Yeah,
function. So
gotcha. Sorry.
it's a little
All right, so
playing catch up on how you're doing it.
if there's no rationale for taking out 2 point whatever percent from each line,
Well, there is a rationale total. I have an overall rationale, which is
reduction.
reduction because the budget itself is a 4.59% increase over last year.
So instead of doing all that math, why wouldn't you just apply it to the bottom line and just say you want
I
to
wanted to
reduce
do
it
that,
by
but I
2
can't.
point?
I'm not.
So my suggestion would be to see where we end and how close we are to your number. And if we don't get there, then we can discuss where you'd like to come back to. Because we don't know, based on other discussions we have, we might get there without having to do 2.2% on different line items.
I get it. And like I said, I did it a certain way because.
Absolutely, that's,
So I don't care how you get to it, and quite honestly, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I got to keep saying that over and over. It doesn't really matter what you cut because they're going to take the money from wherever they want to put it wherever they want. So you can do it however you want. I was going.
no, I
I'm
appreciate it.
redoing my numbers to go by Andrew's format versus the way I did it on this paper.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do it.
So I'll rescind my my.
Wait.
That's okay. The only thing I'd like to ask, and ask Corey, the number was way down last year, but I imagine a big part of it, we were pretty shorthanded and
For which,
wasn't a lot of the non-union
Course reimbursement for non-union.
positions, non-union course reimbursement. Weren't a lot of like grounds and people who would normally go to workshops and courses and whatnot. They didn't go to as much last year. Wasn't it down quite a bit, staffing wise?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, they didn't.
So they.
But most of them are within the LSS, so that's a
Okay.
separate line.
Okay.
This is the non-union line.
Correct.
So
Yeah, so that's like us.
It's just, it was off the 3-year average by quite a bit.
Yep.
And I thought we were shorthanded in a number of departments last year. Like grounds, it might have gone to
Shorthanded, but
not bad.
yeah, it's a separate line.
I actually
So-
had 4,000 for a cut for that line, so.
All right, so would you like to amend the reduction of 176 to 4,000? Because that would be the next step.
Yeah, I would like to amend
So you'd like to make a motion to amend
to
the 176?
$4,000, yeah. And that's district-wide, that's not any particular school.
So is that on line 270?
That's line 270,
All
correct?
right, so now there's a motion to amend the 176 to a reduction of $4,000?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
What happened?
Is it okay?
No, my TV went out.
He probably kicked there.
Oh. Here we go.
Bob, can you see if it's plugged in behind you? The screen went black.
Can I ask you a
Yes,
question,
you
just
can.
for clarification on my part? Your bottom line number, grand total at the bottom,
Yes.
you're going based on a budget that
Yeah,
hasn't
okay.
taken the healthcare
Don't
and
kick it again.
the health reductions that we took into account. So
We as a committee need to discuss all these numbers, right? So
Yeah.
these are just recommendations for us to talk about as a committee, right?
All right, so there's a motion now to amend the reduction to line 270 to reduction of $4,000. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Yep, all right, so made and seconded. So rationale?
I'm just going off of the amount it spiked over the 3-year period, which is based on Andrew's original thing that he sent out,
Mhm.
which is kind of how we did everything with the town. It was based on a
Yep.
3-year
Right.
ordeal.
But so they're requesting 8. You're requesting to reduce it down to 4.
Correct.
But in 2017, they used over 8. In
In 2017,
2018, they almost used 8.
I think that there's currently a push to encourage more of the non-union staff to participate in various trainings and certifications. And I know I've talked to people who work in that capacity who would love to be better trained as paras, as other situations to be better, and how to help these kids more effectively. And so I think that I appreciate where you're coming from, but I don't know that I want to
Already reduced.
course reduction.
It's already
course
been reduced by
reimbursement and training
4,000 over last year.
So there,
Right. It's already down year over year. It's down 4,000.
yes,
That's
So,
why
so
I
it's,
don't know
it's
why.
8,000 now, right?
yes.
Okay.
So the proposal
And
is
he's bringing it down to 4,000 based upon the actuals going back to 2019 and prior.
all right.
It was,
Well,
that's
the
well.
But then it was right around 8,000 too.
17
Yeah.
actual was 82.
Yep.
And the 18 actual was 74.
Agree.
What I just said.
All right. So the
And just to, can I just point out the 3-year average is $6,681.
okay.
'Cause that's-
So all those in favor of amending the reduction to $4,000, please indicate by saying aye. All right. Amendment fails. So we are currently at 176.
So we should do just a
Don't we have to say
formal
no?
vote.
Well,
right? So
all those in favor of, didn't we vote? No.
You have to do
All
all
those in-
opposed.
she just called the vote. So
Okay.
The vote, no, now we have to vote on the 176.
now we have to vote the 176,
Mhm.
right? But I'm also hearing another amendment to this.
Okay, I haven't, okay, I'm not, go ahead.
Right. I would amend that we reduce that by $2,000 from 8,000.
All right, so now there's a motion to adjust the amendment to $2,000. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Brian seconds. Okay, discussion?
Yeah, it puts it more in line with historical, as Rob pointed out.
Well, I just want to point out, it really does, last year was if you look at it, was way off. They averaged closer to 8,000 than they do 3. Last year we were down, and I honestly don't know the reason. I don't know if it was because we had the ground supervisor leave and they were shorthanded. I don't know the reason, but if you look at the 3-year average, it was 82.90 in 2017, 74.38. And then it was 38.15, so it was way off last year, which is skewing that average lower. That's my own, and I know there's money around, but it is.
Yeah, but that's, the
Yeah,
2019 3815, that's actual.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's
And
real.
the
It's real.
82.90 is actual. And I'm just saying, if it was a fluke last year, it's just to point it
Yeah,
out.
so, I mean, conservatively reducing it by $2,000, I don't think that anybody should suffer, and it's a, moderate decrease. Conservative decrease.
All right.
For
So-
me, my position on this one is I think it's properly budgeted as is. As I mentioned in member input, I'm not looking to cut or reduce any additional programs. That's not my intentions tonight. It's simply to look at what I truly believe is over budgeted.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's okay.
So for me, I appreciate the 3-year trend. I get that. But I also want to encourage the training. I've heard from people who would desire the training. So I guess, so my statement here is if I support this number as budgeted, I would strongly encourage training to occur. Otherwise, next year, if I'm still here, I will take that reduction. So, anybody else? All right, so
I'm with you, so.
the current vote, the current amendment on the floor is to reduce the line to 270 by $2,000. But to amend the motion of 176 to 2,000 is the current thing we're voting for. All those in favor of amending the reduction to $2,000, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's 3-5. Sorry. All right. So then, any other amendments on this line? Hearing none. It brings us back to the original amendment of 170, of the original motion of 176. Oh, goodness gracious. Cindy, I don't know how you kept it straight. All right. All those in favor of a reduction of 176 to line 270, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so all those opposed
Aye.
and those who abstain. Okay.
Who was the only support?
It was
It's
2, right?
Brian and Rob.
2, okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Mr. Hodgkins and Mr. Leary.
So 2-6.
It's a good thing we raised the hand because Rob's kind of quiet over there.
No, it's fine, I wasn't.
Oh, go back.
So now we're on line 271.
Yes, we are. All right, line 271, course reimbursement for the union staff members. Are there any motions here?
This is contractual, correct?
Yeah, you can't touch that.
Mike, you can.
You can, you just,
Mike.
I'm sorry.
Did you say?
I'm texting. I'm sorry. I can't
Yeah,
do two
you-
things at
You're
once.
doing
obviously.
double duty. Course reimbursement union, that's contractual, correct? Yes.
so I
The
think, what-
question is whether it's properly budgeted, but
well, right, so I mean, if they expended the entire benefit to which they are allowed is one number. The problem is that we don't seem to fully expend that number. So that's where it comes in. So conservative budgeting would be to budget the full amount. Taxpayers would prefer we budget the more realistic number. So I don't know what the right number is in between. So that's why I'm taking motions.
I'd reduce it by 7,000.
So there's a motion to reduce.
7,500, sorry.
7,000. Second,
No, I'm waiting a second, so it's negative 7,000.
75.
7,500.
All right.
Mary, can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Is this one of the lines that was
This is one
combined?
of the lines that was combined.
Could you
It was-
explain?
Yes, we had, our union course reimbursement, which is which has historically been around 45,000.
Mhm.
Which is the 271 line, and then we had, the 320 line, which is also contractual for workshops.
Mhm.
But when we actually do the payment of that, it all basically gets pulled together. So to help with our budgeting of it, we put it in one account this year, just to streamline our work. But it's budgeted, you can see the budgeting line it's $180 per workshop for the LEA contract, and then it's $360 per person per course per LEA contract. So that's how that number, it's showing an increase, but if you look at the 320 line, it's zeroed out this year.
I'd just like to say there's a number of lines like that in your
Yes.
budget, correct?
Yes, you'll see that in 271 and 272. I did a lot of work in taking what had been historically budgeted by school and where we are really focused on doing things district-wide and vertical teaming. A lot of that has been shifted around and combined into a district-wide.
So realistically, looking at it then, it represents a reduction, right? So if I look at the combined of last year's approved 2020 budget for the lines you mentioned,
More.
it's 76, almost
already a
77,000. So it's already taken almost a $7,000 reduction, more, because we're at 67, almost 9,000. So this number already includes a built-in reduction from last year. All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Can I just ask, is that number different from what you sent out on your spreadsheet?
No, the budgeted number this year is $67,500.
500, which is a $20,000 increase.
But it's.
But you have to look at this is just all black and white numbers, right? The details behind those numbers are a consolidation of accounts.
Mhm.
And actually, when you take the big picture into scope, it's actually already a reduction over last year when you combine those multiple
Right.
accounts.
You combine the
Right, because
320 account
this,
with it,
right, because when you combine the 320 count, which was 47, which was
29.
29.5, and then you add the 47, so then you're at 70, almost 77,000.
Okay.
They're asking now for 67, so it's almost a $10,000 reduction.
And just to clarify, to make sure I'm not incorrect, the previous 3 years' actuals do not include the combination. So you're seeing individual numbers spent,
Yep.
not seeing.
You have to
No,
look
I'm
at
good with that
what
explanation.
you wanted.
It's $10,000 off the board already. That's all right. I'm good with that, Rob. Thank you.
All right, so,
I'll remove
Appreciate it.
all right, so we withdraw the second?
For me, this number's good. So, yep.
All right, so we withdraw the second, withdraw the
Yep,
motion.
I think it's good.
So withdrawn.
That was one of my question marks I had on my thing, so.
All right, that moves us.
I'd just like to give credit where credit's due to Mary that this was explained when she
You
presented.
did it again.
Thank you.
thoroughly.
What's the code?
We just cap on it, Nora.
So next up is 272, Madam Chairman.
Yep.
272 along with 580, in my mind, kind of go hand in hand. I understand we're going to be looking at them a little bit differently during the next couple of hours. 272 is conference workshop reimbursement. Based upon our past conversations amongst this committee and based upon the information that Mr. Izabicki supplied tonight, which is what was budgeted in the handouts tonight. What we're looking at is actuals, which is what's in the file that I sent across. Right. I am prepared to make a motion for $22,647.50 as a reduction to 272. So $22,647.50.
I'd like to second that.
All right, made and seconded. So, any other discussion or comments relative to this?
So just, for full transparency, I don't know if you're sharing the screens or not, but, so what we're looking at here for actuals under conference and workshops, which is the 272 line, in 2017, 21,000, 2018, 26,000, in 2019, just under 20,000. In 2020, it went up to 60,000, right? This year is less, right? But it becomes more of a strategic direction of what the district is, right? And in my opinion of when we spoke about this last week is when you look at it holistically like this, it's kind of, well, I don't really know why the numbers have gone up, right? I mean, obviously we want to support our staff. I'm not suggesting that we don't. I'm not suggesting that we don't do conferences, right? But maybe we just be more strategic with how we do it, right? And for me, $30,000 is more than 17. It's more than 18. It's more than 19. I think it's a fair number for this line.
If I may.
Absolutely.
I can explain the increase in this past year of FY20 as well as the additional, it's actually down a little bit, but in FY21, when I came on board, we took a lot of specific trainings that were either in school budgets, for example, AP recertification, the Project Lead the Way training, things of that nature, that typically the 272 lines are just like the line for curriculum was just earmarked for my own national conference. What we did is we made it a district PD fund. So we took funding from the buildings. This year you'll see, I took all the money out of the 320 accounts, which were building level curriculum PD opportunities, and I put it all into one fund. Really, our goal has been vertical alignment across the district. So rather than have a pocket here, a pocket there, a pocket here, where it's being spent without oversight on whether or not it's aligned with the goals of the district, especially when I came in and a lot of it was in budgets within the buildings. We really wanted to put it together to be able to really be strategic with what we were doing as a district so that alignment K-12, which has been, one of the things that I came on board to really move us forward with. That is why you'll see that increase there. It is a combination of a lot of different lines over the last 2 years.
For me, again, it's conferences, right? At the end of the day, we're talking about conferences.
Workshops.
We're talking, yes.
And workshops.
Yes.
Yes.
But we're talking specifically about, I can tell you that we have the Project Lead the Way program. Every year there is a new teacher that comes in that needs to be trained, or else we can't run those courses. And that's at all grade levels. So that's $1,200 at a whack. It is. And on average, we've had to, I cut it back from last year because I did use some grant funding last year to help get some of those teachers trained because of the timing. But, when all was said and done, I believe I paid about $3,600 in Project Lead the Way training last year. Same thing with the AP recertification. We are required to recertify our teachers when the courses change and when we add new courses. So we recertified one AP teacher last year, and we trained 2 for new courses that we are moving forward. Those are expensive trainings. They really are. And so just in those alone, you're looking at about $5,000 to $10,000 worth of training, depending on what the need is for the year.
So if I'm looking at the historical, what accounts would we have drawn down from in the past for the Project Lead the Way and those other types of?
Before I came in, those were in the building, the building funds. We did a lot of moving around when I came on board to put certain things in the curriculum budget and to take them out of the.
Right, but the building funds are also broken down by accounts though, aren't they? When they do so you get the GMS budget, you get the LMS budget, but each one of those is broken down to a variety.
I'll have 272s.
Yeah, so I mean, it's still, it may have been different 272s, but they were all 272s.
But
The 320s.
Right, but we already said,
320s got.
but we already gave you credit for that by talking the other one.
I can tell you that for the PD line, for all of the different buildings, the 320 lines have been zeroed out. And I can't speak to the building budgets, but I don't believe that in their PD lines, there is much funding left in there.
So
because
just
we
to be
did
clear,
move
I
it.
just added 320, right? That's the line we're talking about in district professional development. And it's an increase, 21,000, 24,000, 29,000. This year it's zeroed, right? Last year was 29,000.
So the combination of 272 and 320 last year, about $90,000.
90,500.
Right. So if the lines are combined, the 320 and the 272, and it's now 52,647,
Let me take off 580.
that's already a pretty good reduction. Am I looking at it correctly?
That is so helpful to see it that way.
And then historically, it's about 40,000 with those combined lines compared to 52,000 this year and change.
All right, so what we're saying, we're on 271. But we really should review them all together, I think. Shouldn't we? It just seems makes more sense. They all go together.
I think travel goes in with this,
Mhm.
but does the
We're just-
committee want to also look at 580 at this point?
I think you have to look at them together because because it's so easy to, because we shuffle the numbers back and forth. It's just, and like to Brian's point, it's bottom line anyway. So let's look at these accounts together. So the current budget has almost 130,000.
The current budget has 129,933 in it. The FY21 budget now has 89,000 in it. Right? The question becomes, you know, well, are we, you know, is $90,000, we'll call it 89,000, is a far cry over what it once was even just a few years ago when these combined were, you know, $60,000 or $50,000.
Right. I mean, if you look at the FY 2019, right, actuals, that we've completed that year, right? So
Yes.
64.
Yep.
The closest you get to it is 2018, and the year before it's 70. So that's a lot of 129. Wow.
So my motion again, right, just to recap,
Would bring that down
on
to
conference and workshop specifically is 22,647.50.
Mhm.
Right? I am not obviously touching 320, but on 580, my goal was to also reduce that by another 11,386.50. And if I combine the two,
yeah.
right, it's 34,034.
So go back. So
Right?
34.
And so if I go
Right.
to here, right, 34,034 would be the motion I would make between conference and workshop and travel.
Can I note something?
Yes.
Just right now, based on calculations, and I know it was a 4.59% increase when we originally gave the budget.
Mhm.
Took out the 10%. You are now in the general fund a less than 1% increase in the budget from FY20 to FY21, which 1% in the budget. How much lower? I mean,
that would be
Pardon?
doing
huh?
baseline budgeting as opposed to zero-based budgeting. I appreciate.
I'm just saying.
So that means you
If you
didn't.
had said 2.2 off.
You didn't
I get it. Can you explain how you're getting that? I'm sorry, I'm looking at numbers of proposed budgets versus.
Because the that your number factors in the reduction of the health insurance. So the original numbers you're looking at don't have the $250,000 reduction from health insurance. So that's a sizable increase right there.
All right, so
Let's see,
So
it's
in the
two hundred
gross
and thirty.
appropriations of 0.85% increase
Right.
for next year. And the general fund budget is now at 0.9.
With the understanding that some of that, a good portion of that's probably going to go into a warrant article.
Well, I've already taken them out.
You're taking them out, but they're going to be added in,
Add it
right?
back in.
How about we figure
Figure as
out,
it won't.
but our goal is to figure out what it's going to cost realistically or reasonably to fund the goals and needs of the school next year. We should, which really means last year's an excellent data point. That doesn't mean, what's it? I mean, it's a good data point, something to start with, I guess, but that's not what the costs are going to be necessarily next
So,
year.
Madam Chairman, focused on what we have here, right? I did not consider my analysis in district professional development.
Okay.
That wasn't part of any of the conversations last week that we had. So this is somewhat new to me that this is also a consideration to this discussion. I appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to amend my motion,
Okay.
right? I'm going to amend my motion to a motion that covers both conference and workshop and travel.
Okay.
And I'm going to take that number and I'm going to say it's $20,000. So
So the
combined
Okay.
conference, workshop, travel, $20,000 motion.
So the line, so just so I know, make a note for myself, these are accounts
Is that a reduction?
A reduction for, across 272 and 580.
272 and 580. Just so that if we get there again.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a motion to amend the reduction to $20,000. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, seconds and thirds. All those in favor of amending the reduction to $20,000, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. So
And
now,
so just from a budgeting perspective, I'll do 10 from 272 and 10 from 580 for our numbers.
all right. 272 and 580.
If you're gonna do.
I like it. All right, so that's the current,
That was the
we
answer.
we just voted on amending the proposal. So now we have to actually vote on the proposal itself.
Pulled some stuff out since back in 20.
So are there any other amendments before we move on to the proposal? Any other amendments? All right, hearing none. So then it would be a combined total of $20,000 spread out as 10,000 to 272 and 10,000 to 580 is the proposed reduction. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7. And for this, I really think your perspective, looking at it as a whole thing, really made a huge difference. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Oops, stop making noise. I know, right? All right. So going back, we were at 272. Is there anything for 280? Account 280. Hearing none. It moves us on to 320, which we kind of covered, so we'll do that zeroed out.
Yep.
321, contracted services. Do we hear any motions? All right. Hearing none. 325.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to reduce 325 by $4,000.
All right. 325. That's not what let's do. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
4,000, yes.
All right.
Who seconded
Mr. Leary.
For discussion, yes.
So what do you have?
Yep. Let me just show this. So if I expand this here, FY17 actual is $9,800. FY18 actual is $9,900. FY19 is $11,507. FY19 budget was 13 and they spent 11.5. Current year, we're asking for 15.5, and that's continued for this current budget. My motion of $4,000 is to align it to actuals, which is more than 17, 18, and what was more accurately spent in 19.
All right. And this is this
4,000 for 325.
This-
Testing protocols.
that covers
It's a special.
she's here. Do you want to?
Corey?
So
Is that in that
that's a
TSAP?
special ed line?
That's a special ed line.
You don't stock at 3M.
I just don't want to move on before she has a chance to.
Well, keep in
What did you
mind
say
that
that was, Corey?
Yeah, it's
Special ed
district-wide, Campbell,
Special ed
LMS,
line,
GMS,
okay.
special services, psychological services, speech services, and OTPT.
That's okay. Everything's on the table for discussion, so just give her a
So
moment.
keep in mind, the special ed budget this year is already overexpended, right? So the money that we have in there for testing is legally mandated. If a student comes along, we're required to do the testing. We may not spend it on that, but we have certainly spent it on other lines that we're legally mandated to spend it on. So anytime you make cuts in special ed, you're essentially making a cut to another part of the budget, because if we need the money there because we're legally mandated to spend it, we will, and then it's going to have to come from somewhere else. So it's one of those, we have to do it.
And that's when I would like to point out, I think I can say it, we're already overspent the number of lines in special ed in December, and there was a pretty big influx of students, correct, Devin? Can I say that?
Changes in.
There was an increase in need,
Need.
which isn't necessarily an influx in students. You can have current students who have additional needs, right? So that's important to keep in balance.
Do you want to come up, or you feel we covered it all? I just didn't want to move on. If you felt he covered it, we can move on. I wanted to give you the chance to speak to your line item.
To speak, I mean, what's listed in here is the protocols to do the required testing that we're required to do as part of the. It's fine, right where I was. To do the required cognitive testing, behavior rating forms, anything like that. So we try to look at, on average, how many protocols are used, which does fluctuate depending upon who's up for renewal, who has moved in, who's referred. So it does kind of go up and down. I just don't want to jeopardize having the protocols to be able to conduct the testing. And when there's new evaluations that come out, we only have 1 year's time frame to purchase the new assessment before the results aren't valid. So sometimes we don't necessarily know when we're planning that a new assessment is going to come out, and that can be a steep cost. So that's really all I have to say there.
Any additional discussion?
No, that also covers like kids that have hearing issues and things like that. Is that their earbuds that they wear or
504s.
whatever they are? Yeah, 504s and stuff, or
So the protocols in here would cover special education and 504.
Mhm.
The specific assessments here are for adaptive functioning, executive functioning, cognitive evaluations, and so forth.
okay, thank you.
See, I struggle on these kinds of ones, and it's not that I have anything to do against your special needs, but I also know what the end of year fund balances look like. So, I mean, we talk about we're going to have to take money from another program or budget, but reality is that's not what we do. We just return less money, or we encumber less money, so it's not like this district is not going to really be choosing between testing these children and buying a computer for another classroom or a server, because we always have money at the end.
Well, we're legally obligated to conduct the evaluation. So
I'm
we're
not
gonna-
saying you're not, and I'm just saying my point is
No, what I'm saying is we'll do it, and if there's not enough money in the line, it'll come from someplace else. But
absolutely. But my point is
And I would just want to point out, right, I mean, another very hefty committee discussion over years past that I am not making any motions on tonight is tuition, right? And that's always an area of typically over budgeting, right? I understand that we're in a kind of a tough spot currently, but historically it's an area where we over budget. Not saying yes or no there, but I'm not making any motions on that line tonight. I don't know about other committee members, but there's always funds in special services that are over budgeted.
well, even if this
it's not,
year,
can I just clarify though, because it's not that they're over budgeted. It's that when we are budgeting, I'm budgeting for the students that I know of at this point in time.
12 to 18 months out.
And it is.
Yes, I
So
understand. You're
there is such change in the needs of the students right this second at 8 something in the evening.
Mhm.
By tomorrow, there's going to be something that pops up.
You're
So
right.
there
And
is-
for the clarity, yes.
Absolutely. And
And I think the committee just needs to keep in mind that we've had to dip into our special ed reserve. So we're gonna have to replenish that, which is gonna put a dent in the fund balance at the end of the year because we're trying to replenish because of the overage. So, there are all these moving parts. And Madam Chair, I hear you talk about a fund balance, but no organization runs on a zero budget, right? There's not a school district that spends every penny that they have. The auditors expect that we have a healthy fund balance because that's part of how we are.
healthy.
That's part of how, well, a healthy fund balance is what percent, right? So that's what the auditors are saying you should have as a governmental organization with unknowns. You have to have some healthy fund balance. I'm not saying an overabundant one. I'm saying a reasonable one in order to make sure, because we can't spend into the zero. We can't go into deficit spending. So we have to have some fund balance. That's the nature of the way it operates. And it's not exceeding what our auditors would expect of us. I don't want to get into a debate. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying
Three points
I
on
just
that.
did the calculation of 2%, and we in the past 10 years have
I'm not
average, I'm
talking-
sure,
I'm
above
not
that.
talking 10 years. Corey and I have been here a year and a half between us.
I'm just
Average.
saying.
3-year average.
Yes, you have, but the people creating there are people here who have been creating budgets for a while. So my point is, I don't necessarily think $4,000 is going to kill the end of year fund balance. So this is where I struggle because I want the money to be where it needs to be, and testing is where it needs to be. But the problem is, there's a lot of money that in the funds that don't need to be there. So that's where I'm going to support having the testing here, but it kills me because I know that there's excess somewhere else. And because I think that the numbers should be representative of where they are, we'll eventually ring it out. But
I think it's important for this committee, just in light of what Dr. Jetty just shared with us, right? And as I mentioned at the start, my goal is to not cripple the district, right? I believe, and as we talked about last week, that a healthy fund balance is somewhere in the $500,000 range at the end of the year. That to me is reasonable, right? It's not a zero base. There are a ton of unknowns for the school, right? You need to budget for that. And I still believe, even with these recommendations firmly, that there will be plenty of money at the end of the year. I believe that.
all right. All those in favor of a reduction of $4,000 to line 325, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry. It fails because the motion was to reduce and it tied.
We're gonna need it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I'll just put
All right, so
in your minutes. It should be good
That's
enough.
why I'm not sure. I know.
so that brings us,
Who voted no, raise your hands.
voted no. Who voted
voted no.
against the reduction?
Oh.
You're gonna be next, I think, again.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So that brings us to 330. Professional services 330. This is a combination of a bunch of things, right? This includes
I'll make a motion to reduce this line by $50,000.
I'll second that.
Egan seconded. All right, do your magic.
Look, it's an area that has been significantly increased year over year over year. Even with a $50,000 reduction, it's still $20,000 over current year.
So within that, you also have the need for a school psychologist and the increases within the one that was the increase, the one that you questioned,
BCBA.
BCBA. So that's justifies the increase in that area. So those again are special services that are driving it.
$100,000 in just a couple of years.
They don't carry
Special
this,
services,
carry.
needs of the children legally obligated.
And it can literally be one or two students, correct, Evan? I mean, it literally can be
I'll give you an example.
No, and I understand that, but then the discussion always becomes why limit one or two? Maybe it's three or four. Like how much extra do we really put in the budget? So at some point you need to make a calculated decision.
But I just want to
I'll give you
clarify.
an example from my auditing days. I was auditing a school district out by the seacoast. And I was reviewing contracted services for special services. There was a budget to actual discrepancy of $318,000. So I questioned it. I'm like, what happened here? They said, one kid with special needs, a residential placement moved out of district. So, that being said, these areas, it's touchy, and we are overspent already this year. So if you think that population is going to drop,
There are two
Just saying.
specific lines as I highlighted in this motion
Okay.
that are focused for the increase. One, legal services, which is up, right? So out of that 50,000, 10,000 of my motion includes a reduction in legal services. The other 40,000 is across psychological services and these other lines that we budgeted for, which includes ground services and other areas.
legal services was up. We're saying to increase because of the ongoing contract negotiations that we've had, and I bet we've exceeded that in this past couple of years easily. Spend a lot of money on legal.
We had one grievance that cost $15,000. $15,000 for one grievance. That's how costly it can get. And the district prevailed on it because the contract language was clear. But we had to spend $15,000 to defend clear contract language. So you have to understand, this is some things like this. I mean,
Can I speak to that? And,
Well, we can't get into the specific details.
well,
We don't need,
okay.
we don't, what happened, it
It's-
happened. We
it's
can't.
on,
let's-
but, okay. All right.
And can I just to go back to Devin, Devin, you make this is based on the current student population, you come up with the numbers, correct?
Yeah, so a lot of, well, not this one, but the one that was up there, 330 is comprised of different, from varying parts of the budget. Although a huge chunk of it is from the special services budget. So psychological services, the huge increase in there is because we are contracting.
We're not able to fill that position. There's a critical shortage of qualified psychologists.
Yep, and so
statewide.
I budgeted
Statewide.
to maintain exactly what we're providing this year, just contracting for school psych services. So that's why there's an increase specifically in the school psych professional services line. And then my other 330 line in my account, at this point, it's all the $176,405 that I have in FY20's budget is all allocated for. So I don't have anything that's unallocated this year, and I budgeted for FY21, keeping it the same. So
If you get a question about this, why didn't you bring it up?
Because it's going into a personnel issue.
No, I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to know why it's not in the 335 account,
Oh, okay.
which is legal. Why is it in the professional services account?
Oh, that's good.
You have a specific account for legal, which is 335.
335, that's the one that's in Devin's budget. That's the special services line.
Wait,
So this legal is not special services.
That legal is district legal.
Right. Because Devin's total legal is 8 and you're
Right.
cutting 10.
But that, I'm not cutting it from 335. I'm cutting it from 330. Right, so if I go into 330, there's also a line here for legal services.
What's the request this year? I can't read it.
I'm sorry, the request is 60,000.
60, that's,
Yeah, so
we
that's-
increased it.
That's the administrative one. That's not the special.
That's not the special.
Yeah.
That's why I spoke to the contract piece because that would come out of that line. Her legal fund is really, a family comes in with an attorney to make a case about an IEP. It's a different legal line to defend that
Or
situation.
we haven't spent, in 335, we haven't spent a tremendous amount of money, and what we do spend is in training and consultation.
With legal services
Yes.
providing, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
There's a motion and a second. If
I know,
anybody wants to
I'm-
amend, by all means.
is there a motion to amend? We'll start with
No.
that. No?
Motion to amend it to a decrease of 10,000
So to 40,000 or to 10,000?
to 10.
To 10.
All right, so there's a motion to amend the reduction to $10,000. Is there a second? Ryan seconds.
I think, again, it's hard when we're looking at it by account because that service encompasses so many different things. I think some of the increases, for example, the legal fees, that's a conversation we can have about. We try to make the best budget, best that we can. I think 50 is too much. That some of in 330 are things based on students' actual need. And some of it are other professional services that are being budgeted, things like enrollment projections that's $800. You know, I try to take a look across and break it back down out.
Okay. There's
There's a huge mixture in this account line. And I just feel that it would be hitting some of the students' need. And I don't think that's the intention, but that would be the outcome. Obviously, then they would have to take money from other stuff. We know this.
Okay.
I think the line can be reduced. I think 50 is too much.
All right. So all those in favor of amending the reduction to $10,000, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Well,
Fails.
so fails 4-4. All right. So we're still at $50,000. Oh boy.
Okay.
So it's either all or nothing for some people. Okay. So all those, are there any additional amendments on the plan table? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of a reduction of $50,000 to line 330, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. So that one fails too, right?
Yep.
All right, are there any other discussion on line 330?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, that moves us up to 331, audit services. 331. All right. Hearing none, I'm sorry.
That's a contract. If you're looking at 331, that's a contracted amount.
It doesn't mean people can't reduce it. You just have to find the money somewhere else. All right. Hearing nothing, goes on to 332, tutor services. Any discussion, comments on tutor services, line 332? All right, hearing none, that puts us at, well, we discussed slightly 335, legal services.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to reduce this by $3,000.
I will second that because that's the number on my screen too. All right, so there's a motion to reduce line 335 by $3,000.
So we just had a discussion. I understand this is the special services legal account. Look, as we talked about, it's 12 to 18 months out budgeting. If I look at the details, just so the committee sees, right, specifically on this one line, let me blow it up. Actuals, 3,000, 4,000, 3,000, budgeted 18 for 19, budgeted 8,000 for 20, and we're just carrying that forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to see, I mean, I'm going to stay by my motion, but in the event that there's more actual year-to-date expense data that we can obtain on this account, I'd be willing to entertain that at one of our other committee meetings to add the money back in.
So my rationale was they used the same, it's $3,000 for the school district attorney. We saw how easy it was to get them to break out other accounts. So my guess is some of the, whatever is being used by this attorney is already being captured under the school district. So I felt that in some ways, well, it's from an accounting purposes, it probably makes sense. But I think that it's not necessarily being broken out where it should be, and it's already being covered. So any other comments on the?
Can I just clarify that?
Yep.
So you were saying that special services legal fees would be covering.
So what
elsewhere?
what I'm saying is you use the same attorney as the school for the school board. Yeah, it's listed as the same school board attorney, something or other on your.
Different firms.
Yeah, two different firms.
So any legal bills specific to special services come to me, and that is what's reflected in 335. So
There's-
nowhere else is it paid.
There's two different legal items I looked in your budget. One was Primex and one was school district's attorney.
So Primex is liability. So,
Mhm.
right, so Primex is the same, that's not the attorney.
Okay.
And we have a special education attorney, which is different than the school district's attorney.
Do they work for the same firm?
That
So-
line,
They
That line's
use a
encumbered.
firm that specializes in special ed
Okay.
law. We use a general firm with a couple of different attorneys depending on
Mhm.
collective bargaining, policy.
that
Well-
line's encumbered at about $3,000 at this point in the year. We got 7 months to go.
So it has been low, I can't argue
Mhm.
with.
So then I will,
But I just wanted to clarify that there are no special services legal bills being covered by any place.
I wasn't saying it would be intentional. I just was saying that maybe the lawyer doesn't put the correct code in. But now I will amend my rationale to say I was comfortable with a legal reduction of $10,000. It's a bottom line budget. I'll take 3,000 here. So.
Yeah.
So all those, is there any other amendment or comments relative to a $3,000 reduction on line 335? Hearing none, all those in favor of a reduction of $3,000 to line 335, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, it passes 6-2.
It was 6-2.
Oh, I thought it was 5-3, sorry.
All right. So that brings us up to line unless there's any other comments or amendments. All right, hearing none, we're at account 339, athletic trainer services,
I'll make a motion, Madam Chairman, to reduce this by $2,000.
$3,000. Is there a second?
2,000.
2,000. Is there a second?
Second for
All right,
discussion.
Rob seconds. You can come on up. Absolutely. Just to be clear, if any of these items hit your account, please feel free to come up. It's as much as I like these two guys, you guys will make the more compelling argument. So please feel free and welcome. Come on up.
Sure. So that's a contracted service.
Okay.
So I believe we have him, this is the second year of his service. I believe, I'm not off the top of my head, I can't tell you for sure on that. So we'll be renewing that contract, I'm assuming, next year.
So is it a contract like a lump sum contract or is it an hourly or event
It's a
style?
lump sum. So
Okay.
paid out in 2 installments over the course of the year.
All right. So, I mean, so if we're hourly and maybe you're, not sure on the hours, but if it's a lump sum, not much we can do with it.
What they have on that line is 29 for the services and then 1 for the doctor reading of the impact testing software, which is
Yep.
necessary.
And the impact testing is related to concussion testing for athletes, which they all have to undergo.
Was it contracted in years past?
Yes, yep.
The contract amount consistently goes up. I forget what the percentage is.
It's a small
but It
percentage.
does, yeah.
$1,000 maybe or so.
All right.
Okay, so I will amend my motion and remove it. I will remove my motion, whatever the proper.
Who had the second?
Withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw.
Withdraw the second, withdraw the motion.
It's 9. It's past 9 now.
Excellent. Game officials, 391.
$391, Madam Chairman. I'll make a motion to reduce this by $6,663,
May want to come back up here.
which sets it to $35,000. 6,663.
Rates this year?
What's that?
Did they adjust rates?
They adjusted the rates last
We're moving to
year.
35,000, so
Yep,
6,663. 3 6s and a 3.
Who was the second?
Did somebody say?
Second
Yeah,
for
Rob.
discussion, yeah.
I knew I heard it. I just couldn't remember which door.
Just at the high school.
All right.
Should
Rationale?
it be?
This is the 391 line?
Yes,
yes,
sir.
it is.
Game officials.
Yep, yep.
What's your
How much?
rationale for your reduction?
6,663.
He's bringing it to 35,000.
Yep, if you look at what we've had in the past, ranges from 24 up to the 19 was 28,000. This can be variable. Part of the challenge with that, we just found that out with our boys soccer team, is we added about $600 at the end of the season because it was successful and won a state championship. So we can't predict when we're going to be in playoffs and when we're not going to be in playoffs, but you bear the burden of costs if you're the home team for the officials during those times. So it tends to be a line that is not spent all the way over, but it's hard knowing what that line is supposed to be. So, we're budgeted at 35,000 this year. The state did increase the fees over, I believe it was the last year. So we ended up paying a significant amount.
I actually think, Bill, I think it's $10 an official next year, but I could be wrong.
Okay,
I was trying to find the numbers. I think.
okay, yes, yeah. I'm not certain of that, but,
Right.
but we're, yeah, it's
So this is you hope they do well. You hope
Correct.
It's a guessing game.
absolutely, yep.
So, all right. Are there any other comments
So I
or
would just, I pulled up the data. I recognize it's a little small, so I'm trying to make it
I appreciate it. My
for
old
everybody,
eyes. I
so-
appreciate it.
28,000 actual in 17, 25,000 actual in 18, 33,000 actual in 19. 20 is 40,000. You know, if we use the concept of averaging,
Mhm.
right, which I think in this case makes sense, the number is actually $35,000. So,
And just to remind the committee, the high school principal sitting here, but the smaller number is actually Principal Lecklider's number because game officials are also needed at the middle school. His numbers are very tight. There is a little more room at the high school number.
Okay. So are there any other comments or amendments to be made to line 391?
I guess the only thing I would point out, and Bill, tell me if I'm wrong, we're adding in, the big jump you see also adds in lacrosse that year.
Correct.
So
Correct.
on top of the increase that happened, lacrosse was added to get to 33,000
Yeah.
from 25. So there is it's not really an average because we had two more sports, boys and girls lacrosse added with officials. And on top of that, we're going to have either just had or having an increase in officials fees.
That's correct. Previously was self-funded, so they were paying for their own officials and uniforms and travel and those things.
Madam Chairman, I'll amend my motion to $5,000.
All right, there's a motion to amend the reduction to $5,000. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor of amending the reduction to $5,000, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
All right, so the motion passes. So we're now looking at a $5,000 reduction to game officials.
Yeah. well, In light of the conversation just had, maybe it's a better number with the new program.
What was the
added.
first number? I'm sorry.
The first number was 6,663.
No, it's 5,000.
Yep, the new one's 5,000. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of a reduction of $5,000 to account 391, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Passes 7-1. All right.
Oops, that's a minus.
This is on the agenda for today. All right. So that brings us to account 411, utilities and water. Well, a sore subject for a lot of people in town.
I would suggest we skip over the utilities altogether because
Well, then you just say no changes and we'll move on. At least we say we
Okay.
reviewed them. We've done our diligence
Okay.
of reviewing them. Hearing no changes to water, we'll move on to 412.
Sewer. Anyone?
Sewer, none. All right. Moves us to 421, disposal. Hearing none. Moving on to snow plowing, 422.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to reduce this by $2,002.
Oh, that was a good year.
I like the scalpel.
It's better than a hatchet, right?
That's right.
second it for discussion.
No. Okay, second. Motion in a second. All right, go ahead. Of course, he says this after a snowstorm.
Well, I mean, look, so
See
I
how the
mean,
winter looks.
snow plowing, who knows, right? We've had bad years, we've had great years. I understand that this
No,
is.
we're done. We had all our
Yeah,
snow. for
I
the
hope
winter.
you're
We're
right, and
done.
I hope there's palm trees and stuff that pop up. But it's a tough number to budget.
Well, it's a fixed rate contract
Yeah,
What
okay.
is the
year to
contract?
year with Eddie Dalton.
What is the contract?
Off of my head, I can't tell you.
Well, it's probably the
I have to look in
actuals, Bob.
Well, no, because there's a difference because we purchase salt from.
We purchase.
We purchase the salt from the town.
On an as-needed basis. though, right?
On an as-needed
You don't
basis.
store that anywhere.
What's that? No, we don't.
You don't have a
Um,
salt shed.
So, should be in the.
Right here.
We'll find it for you in the budget.
So in this line, there's 37,000 for your fixed contract. There's 2,000 for additional snow removal above contract,
Mhm.
and 8,000 payments made to Litchfield. Right, that's what's in this line.
Mhm.
My motion is to reduce it by $2,002.
This one you just never know. Oh, this snowstorm was in this. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's this year's budget. It's not like the town budget, which resets in January. All right. So we have a motion to reduce line account 422 by $2,002 and no cents. Is there any additional discussion, comments?
It's a variable. I mean, if we get a lot of snow, the expense is going to be up. And
It's the same with the town though, right? It's the
Yeah.
same conversation we've had.
yeah, I think the only thing we cut from the town was the salt budget, right?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember.
I think we got 5,000 from that, but we're going to need it again. But
All right.
safety,
Yeah.
that's what my concern.
All right. All those in favor of the reduction of $2,002 from snow plowing, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. 5-3.
That's 5-3.
5-3. Yes, please. All right. Any additional comments? Hearing none, that moves us to 430, repairs and maintenance.
I just had a question on that.
Shoot.
Building services, repairs and maintenance. It's a non-specific account based on square footage amount of the schools. But then you have added projects that you put in like windows or whatever else. But it figures out to about $100,000 for the three schools combined. So you have that number plus you have the additional projects. What are we budgeting 100,000 for if we have projects?
Project?
Yeah.
There's window
Concrete.
replacement, GMS,
Yeah, I know. So you have those things and then you're
Cleaning
adding
supplies and other
$100,000
stuff.
on top of it.
then regular maintenance, you never know what's gonna come. You gotta fix a boiler, you gotta fix.
That's a lot of money though. $100,000 is quite a bit.
But I thought it was also generic cleaning supplies and other items come out of that budget. More than that. Oh, repairs and maintenance. Huh? That's the
Supplies has
supplies.
its own line.
Okay. I agree with you in principle, but I also know that there's a lot of repairs and maintenance that could be done. They could easily spend every dime in that and
And then
still have more to do.
Okay,
So that's not.
that was my question.
Any other comments on? Listen. I welcome any questions and discussions. That's how people get comfortable with the budget.
I mean, I would say on the tour, I saw quite a few areas. I know that they've got their priorities on repairs and things, and then also maintenance. Some of those old boilers, and I mean, there's a lot that you know. Hi, I met him at Litchfield Middle School. Yay!
So
Well, I mean, to your point, that's exactly why there's no motions from me here.
Right.
Right. I
There's a
mean,
lot that
there's a
can
lot
be
of
done.
priorities. We talked about aging infrastructure. Obviously, GMS has its own set of problems, right? We talked earlier tonight about Campbell being now over 20 years old, right? And some of the aging infrastructure there that needs to be addressed. You know, I'm actually surprised you're not including, because we don't know the information yet, but we talked about switches as a top priority, right? For heating, like that's something I would actually look forward to and welcome in the budget. You know.
We're working with the capital planning committee. We're looking at some of the additional revenue that we're anticipating and trying to find a way to work within that. So we didn't include it here in this budget. But
I mean, whatever way addresses it, right? I think the number's good.
right. All right. So that moves us to account 431, painting. All right. Hearing nothing. 432. Boiler repair and maintenance. All right. 433, contractor repair and maintenance. Let's go up here.
Sorry, I know it's small in the audience. It's like really large here though. So try and make it a little bit bigger.
434, air quality.
No motion for the $2, anyone? Okay.
We'll let them have that.
Okay.
440 rental lease instrument equipment something. Extra something. That's the LMS. That's LMS, isn't it? For the portables we should have bought like 4 times over by now.
This is
A couple
So
different things.
it's actually lease of instructional
Copy
equipment.
machine.
Yeah.
Oh.
What is it?
Copiers.
Oh no, module payments the next one. Like a leased car. You turn it in and get an updated model.
down to 441.
441.
That's your modular.
Can't do anything about that.
442. All right, 446 software lease.
446, I'm not prepared to make any motions, but my question, and I see the IT director here, right, is this all contractual, right? So we have software leases in this budget across various functions. Is it all contractual?
Well, there was one that was almost 18 on itself. That was that unfunded mandate.
There's a couple of them.
True. Yeah.
They hit all 3
And
schools, I
then
thought.
a couple, yeah, there were quite a few.
Hi, everybody. In
Guardian.
1020, 446 line there, part of that's Microsoft Office. So, and the server licensing and everything. So is it contracted? Not necessarily. But without that, we wouldn't be legally.
I would do that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Adobe Creative Cloud software that's just built into some of the curriculum. And then you're right, the 17,820 is for basically this type of software tool that will help us do event monitoring and check off some of the boxes that the state has given us for like minimum standards to be compliant against. The other 446 lines, I don't believe are actually in my budget. They might be part of
The SA,
curriculum or some of the other schools.
the SAU one is our e-finance software. That is contractual.
All right, are there any comments or recommendations relative to line? We got 446?
Yep.
All right, hearing none, that brings us to 460, inspections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hearing none, 519, transportation. It's another fun one.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So I'm prepared to make a motion here to reduce 519 by 49,443, which sets the budget to 1,120,000.
That's the regular regular transportation for 180 days and the late bus. Those are contractual.
This is all of it, right? So this is transportation
All right, first, we have a motion. Let's get a second, and we can start talking.
and athletics in here too.
Ryan, made a second. So now you can please proceed.
Yes, he's got everything.
This is everything,
Yep.
right? So
Your motion was 49,443.
yes, 49,443. Right. This is also including special transportation, vocational athletics. This is including the buses, which I understand, the regular run buses, which are contractual. I understand that, as well as the extra hours. So, look, transportation, if you've been on this committee for years, you know this is an area we typically over budget.
Mhm.
So, and let's just, for sake of argument here, make this larger. So my number is 1,120,000. That's what my motion would bring it down to.
Okay.
FY21 is 1,169,000. Right. So is that? Yeah, 1,120,000.
Yeah.
So that might be a little steep.
Devin, just to clarify, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there almost a $30,000 increase with an outer district this year?
Yeah, so I had budgeted for an increase, which is slightly over, but it's about $25,000 more than what FY20 is. And at this point, my account is already negative 23,000.
Right. So I guess, when I was looking at this, I was looking at FY20, right, being 1,104,000 and saying, all right, 1,120,000 still represents an increase year over year, right? Still understanding contracts, understanding that the regular run buses also have an increase this year. That's where I was.
And I think, does this include sports, Corey?
This does include sports.
He's
athletics.
included it all.
Okay, and just so you know, there's a sports are hurting a little bit.
Yes, I see that.
And that's, we adjusted these twice, correct? We adjusted down and then we
board took
adjusted
20.
based on new.
Okay.
I just, Corey can explain better, but I know sports are biting us a bit right now. Or I shouldn't just sports, any extracurricular activities are biting us quite a bit right now.
You know what? I'm looking at this and that I think this is a little steep, so I'm going to amend my motion to $30,000.
All right, so there's a motion to amend it to a reduction of $30,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Rob seconds it.
Rob.
Leary,
thank
Mr. Leary.
Nobody calls me mister.
Now I'll have to make a point to do it so you hear it occasionally.
So just in terms of the sports piece, right? So we have a new athletic director. He has been getting up to speed on the budget, trying to understand how the previous, he inherited the budget developed by the previous athletic director. He's already identified transportation as I don't understand how I'm going to do it with what was here, right? So I just want to keep that in mind, that he's trying to figure out how to make this all work. We have a new bus contract, which changed the rates on us. And so when you put all this in the mix, it's just something to be mindful of because, the bottom line is we've got to send the teams to the games that we've committed to or bring the students to the school that they're attending. And so a cut here could result in a cut somewhere else if we have to do what we're contracted to do.
And in a weird way, just to explain it for those who don't have kids playing sports in school, we're probably in about the worst part of the state to be a Division III team, if I'm not mistaken, because we're around all big schools, so we have to travel a long way to get there, and that's where it's hitting us, correct?
Yeah, it's a really solid point. We're a small school in a big school area, so our trips are further than other schools are. So it adds to transportation.
Oh, please come on up.
Speaking specifically to that, Josh provided me the actuals for the first, for the fall season. So we had budgeted about $24,000, almost $25,000. We're up to $33,300, we're up almost $9,000 of what we anticipated. So if you extend that to the next two seasons, it won't be quite as dramatic, but you're probably talking somewhere in the rounds of $24,000 over if we have good players. But you're talking, already, it's $8,500 over 24 sorts of things.
So we expanded how we're offering transportation to certain athletic
We've
programs.
added teams.
We've added teams, right? And maybe that's partly why we're seeing that. Yep.
The adding
it's
teams
also-
doesn't affect this season, however.
But it affects the budget.
It will affect in the spring, yeah.
I'm not sure what he took for an increase last year with the new transportation contract either, right? So I'm not exactly sure how that got budgeted, so that may have been an under budget.
Since this is a very large number, and do we want to, since we're not going to get through the rest of these numbers likely tonight, do we want to reconsider and dig into it a little bit and maybe come back next week? Or do you want to amend
I'm good with the amended motion.
All right, you're good with your amended motion. Excellent.
Have we voted to amend the motion?
Yes. Well, we voted to have the discussion about the amended motion. Now
Right.
it's voting on the amended motion.
So all those in favor of amending the reduction to so that it becomes a reduction of $30,000 to line 519, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
I guess.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. So it passes 6-2. And then now the motion on the table is a reduction of $30,000 to account 519.
Wasn't that what we just voted?
We voted on amending it to 30,000. Now we have to vote on the actual reduction. Yes. So let's now vote on the reduction of $30,000 to line 519. If you are in favor of reducing account 519 by $30,000, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. So it passes 6-2.
Can I just ask a quick question on the vote on the amended motion, the first one?
Yes.
Was it Bill and Nikki that were no?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and this was Rob and Nikki. Okay.
Yeah, I think Rob preferred 30 to 49.
I don't know how to vote on those.
That's tough, yeah.
All right, so
So,
we're gonna actually have to wrap it up.
Recognizing time, you know, what are, what's
So
what's
we
the
are-
next steps here?
So I think we'll move on. We will bring this up again next week, starting on line 59, account 590. And we will move into
521.
521. Right. I have a note there, so my eyes just jumped. 521. We will pick up again on line account 521 next week. Let's give us
That's
a
on 1219, right?
1219. So we will begin here. I'm putting a nice dark line right across here. All right.
So with that, tonight's motions, just in summary, we have approved recommendations or motions totaling $450,002.
All right. Let's take a look at this one. I'm not sure why I don't know.
450,002.
All right, so then that brings us to anything quickly on, town. You will be presenting your warrant articles next week?
Yes.
Excellent.
Troy will be here next week for that.
Excellent. Anything else we need to know about how the status of your default budget and other stuff?
He's got all that stuff
Hopefully
he's
next
working on. Yeah, hopefully he'll be all here next week.
Excellent.
Yeah, we have our police chief retiring next week and the new one swearing in and
Excellent.
lots of doings.
Lots of good ones. So it brings us to member input. Is there anything we'd like to discuss here before we move to public input?
I would just suggest again, I understand we've all got lots of things to do, but I found the selectmen meeting this past week when they talked about some of the budgetary stuff and what they're expecting for
Warrants and costs.
encumbrances. There's a lot of discussion there that might help if people have time to watch that portion. Because it's going to get rehashed next week.
It was a
and
short
for-
meeting, by the way. It was
Yeah.
only 50 minutes long, so I do encourage, you know,
If people do have
50 minutes is doable.
We try to wrap it up quick.
although you did go into non-public, so who knows how long it actually went.
So is there any other member input? And then we'll open the floor to
the public.
all right, public input? You guys want?
Anybody want to say something?
All right. All right, hearing nothing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We'll see you next Thursday, December 19th.